Hello, and welcome to the finale of Asian Battle Royale. If you missed the last episode, basically what happened is an alliance called the UR, standing for Universal Resistance, came into existence in opposition to the MPA, which had recently merged with the Arab Accords, and completely kicked their butt. So with that, let's get into the finale of Asian Battle Royale. So, you might have noticed I orchestrated this so that the top 10 are left, I believe. And it's about to be the top 9 because India didn't much like that Sri Lanka was forced to be removed from them, and they see it as an easy target, and they start trying to invade into it. And this has happened many a time in this series, but a vote will be held by the UR as to whether Sri Lanka should be defended or not. So Iraq will vote no, Kazakhstan will vote no, Sri Lanka will obviously vote yes, China will vote yes, Indonesia, which also has Southeast Asia, will vote yes, the Philippines will vote no, and Korea will vote no. So I think that's a vote by one again, and because of that, Sri Lanka is not helped. And the Philippines, that was not a popular decision within their country. The leader just didn't want to get involved in this war, so they didn't, and because of this, Sri Lanka is going to be taken and merged into India. 9 countries remain, but not for long. Iraq will simultaneously declare war on 2 countries, being the 2 countries that were part of the Arab Accords that are still left, and they'll start invading into Yemen, while Syria and Yemen connect up their border with Iraq. And things are going pretty well for the defenders right now, as Iraq is kind of suffering. Pretty quickly, Iraq is kicked out, not just suspended, but kicked out from the UR, because no one needs this war right now, and mostly because Kazakhstan is basically running the UR at this point, and they really want to take some land from Iraq, so that's exactly what they do. And Iraq will fight hard, but unfortunately for them, it's just too much. And so although this war progresses very slowly, and it's kind of embarrassing for the non-Iraq powers, and is like a brave stand for Iraq, eventually Iraq will not be able to take it anymore. Baghdad will be taken, and Iraq will be divided up between the winners. 8 countries remain. And now everyone is kind of starting to get afraid of Kazakhstan, especially their neighbors, who all universally decide to recreate the Mutual Protection Alliance, which is going to be India, China, Korea, Syria, and Yemen, against the Philippines, Indonesia, and Kazakhstan. But Kazakhstan doesn't care much, and they're going to initiate yet another war against Arabia this time. And let's just say Kazakhstan is very powerful at this point, and they can't be stopped, because before news even breaks to India, the front line already looks like this. India will obviously start invading, but this is as much as their puny armies can do. During the entire time it takes Kazakhstan to invade west, and Kazakhstan's allies are also helping out in this front, as all of their gains are reversed within the first month of Kazakhstan switching which front they're focusing on, and very quickly India will surrender, China will fall, and Korea will also fall. However, the peace treaty is about to get heated. Kazakhstan wants to annex the West. Their allies say, no, we're not going to let you annex the West. Kazakhstan wants to annex India, parts of India, China, and Korea. They say, we're only going to let you annex less of India, China, and Korea than you wanted. Kazakhstan threatens to declare war on their allies if they don't get what they want. And now the real war begins, as parts of resistance against Kazakh occupation throughout the entirety of Asia are now going against Kazakhstan, as well as Kazakhstan's former allies, who very quickly start taking parts of China back, as well as Korea. And Kazakhstan might be a bit cooked. India starts rebelling, Sri Lanka rebels. India and Sri Lanka are finally on the same team. And it looks like Kazakhstan might have finally met their match. Yemen is liberated, as is Syria, and Kazakhstan fully withdraws from the west to focus on the east. First thing they do is deal with these smaller pockets of rebellion that are not as able to fight up back. They then take advantage of Taiwanese discontent with being controlled by the Philippines to take Taiwan and start invading back into China. But they're losing the West pretty hard as the MPA is kicking them. Georgian rebellions also help with this as Iran is starting to be retaken. Bet rebels, and unfortunately the rebellion can't really be crushed. Or unfortunately for Kazakhstan, the rebellion can't really be crushed. And this allows for India to massively liberate itself as they start invading into parts of Kazakhstan. As Kazakhstan loses access to the Indian Ocean, which is going to be even more devastating to them because Taiwan is retaken and any gains they might have had are quickly reversed. Korea starts getting their main government back and things start going pretty well. But then a Japanese leader rises up in Tokyo and declares independence from Korea, joining the UR, which is just Kazakhstan at this point, but it still technically existed. And you might not think this does anything, and it doesn't do much, but it does start a Japanese invasion of Korea that doesn't go very well. Kazakhstan is losing the Caspian Sea as they officially withdraw their whole navy from there and are officially landlocked, even though I guess they were already landlocked. Tibet is a fortress for Kazakhstan that is difficult to take but also difficult to defend. But Korea is now starting to lose to Japan as Taiwan once again rebels and then is crushed. And the island of Taiwan has been very, very thoroughly crushed. Kazakhstan is continuing to lose this war, but they're not fully out of it yet. They will continue fighting until the very end, if that's what it takes for them to stay alive. And remember how I said the Taliban wouldn't pop up again? Well, they're popping up again, as Kazakhstan pays some smaller members of the Taliban to rise up in Iran to try and cause any distraction, but it doesn't work at all. They are just completely crushed, as well as Kazakhstan's hopes and dreams of winning the series, as any gains they have are finally officially gone, and Korea starts liberating itself against Japan. Then, all of a sudden, a whole bunch of troops start coming in from Russia and invading into Korea, and it's the son of the dictator from North Korea who fled at the very beginning of the series. I told you I would bring him back up. He wants to control Korea, not the current leaders of Korea, and Korea is going to have to withdraw from a large portion of the land they had to deal with this, but they aren't able to deal with it because Korea's democracy is kind of collapsing. They have a dictator who's South Korean, and the North Korean dictator is doing better and takes over Korea. So all of a sudden, things might be going a little bit better for Kazakhstan, although their home front is not going as well. Their economy is starting to collapse, and the actual land that is the main part of Kazakhstan is losing. Another Israeli-Palestinian joint rebellion will happen against Syria, which Syria will quickly move to crush, before yet another Azerbaijani-Armenian rebellion will break out in the Caucasus and take over Georgia. And this rebellion is actually allied with Kazakhstan. They don't want to join back up with Kazakhstan, but if they win, Kazakhstan will probably make that happen. They just didn't like being occupied. Then Kazakhstan makes an offer to give the UAE independence if they rise up, so they do, before they're crushed. And Kazakhstan realizes their way out. They're not going to win by traditional warfare anymore. It's way too late for that. But they could still win via non-traditional means, as Korea is fully switched sides. And election rigging in Indonesia has led to a pro-Kazakh Indonesian guy coming into power, as Indonesia decides to leave the war. All of these events are very motivating to Kazakhstan and very demotivating to their enemies, and Kazakhstan, with the help of Russian logistics, starts taking back land in the west. As the Taliban, for one final hurrah, rebels in Iran again, and this time is successful, invoking anti-Arabian sentiments to unite Iran in rebellion until they get merged into Kazakhstan. And Kazakhstan basically promises the Taliban independence within Kazakhstan, which would not be a good thing. Fortunately, the leader doesn't actually plan to stick to that. But anyway, Taiwan has rebelled again, and this time things aren't going so well as the Philippines start falling to Japanese invasions. And with their mainland falling, their Chinese section will also fall, as China themselves are starting to get invaded. The Arabians are starting to fall again, and with the momentum Kazakhstan has, it'll only take a few months for them to fully take over the Arabian Peninsula once again. And now it's the old buddies, India and China, against the rest of the world, minus Indonesia. And unfortunately for them, things are no longer going their way. And they're just so war-torn at this point, way more than Kazakhstan is. And unfortunately for them, their road ends here. And this time at the peace treaty, Kazakhstan gets their way. And these are the new borders of Asia. Only 3 countries stand in resistance to the Kazakh army. One is Japan, who also has the Philippines. One is Korea, run by the North Korean dictator. And one is Indonesia. All relations start to break down between these 3 countries, and things are about to spiral out of control. Kazakhstan, never missing an opportunity, will mobilize the troops they still have, and within a year after the war ends, will start invading into Manchuria. And it seems like Russian logistics are still helping Kazakhstan, despite Kazakhstan's objective strength, as Korea will fall very quickly with the help of some Chinese rebels, but no big rebellion. And in one last hurrah for the rest of the world, Kazakhstan will invade into Indonesia, and they don't actually invade this quickly. It'll be a long, hard-fought war, and into Japan, which is also a long, hard-fought war. But the problem is that you already know which country is winning. You knew as soon as that last war ended, the peace treaty war, as it will be called. You knew that Kazakhstan was winning. So I didn't feel like extending this part of the video too long. But yeah, I mean, I knew Kazakhstan was winning since episode 1. I've tried to kind of not make it too obvious, but make it seem obvious in retrospect that Kazakhstan was going to win, because they were by far the most aggressive country. They kept gaining land. I don't think they lost a single war the whole time, which should have really made things obvious they were going to win. I never like to do countries that die and get revived. I really don't like having them win. It just feels wrong. So, yeah, I think it should have been predictable, but not too predictable. I think I did this pretty well. I really hope this series does well, because I'd rather shift to this kind of video, but African Battle Royale is coming out. The next video I release should be the finale of that, so stay tuned for that, which is why you should keep subscribed. Comment down below if you knew who was going to win. Like the video if you enjoyed it. And with that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.